Good morning. Good morning, Danielle.
Good morning.
Happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday. Got some extra time to sleep in this morning.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, it's not 7:30, is it?
It's 7:30 somewhere.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
So, today is Monday, May 16th, 2022. And this is episode 99, which will make our next episode 100.
Dang. Tomorrow.
That was like a double air horn. Oh, man. 100 episodes, huh? That's a fun one. Well, Danielle, you were not on the set for... Oh, you want to get up there, don't you?
He wants to join the episode. Come on,
Go on.
keep going.
Get on up there, buddy. Get up there,
I
Lincoln.
may have overcommitted. Come on, bud. Get up. Up. There you go. Oh,
for those who are audio only, when Lincoln wants to get on the couch, everything must stop. He must get on the couch. So, Danielle, you weren't on the set on Friday, but do you know what we did on Friday?
Yeah. So I watched about all of the movies, and then we also actually watched some of the movies over the weekend. So that was fun.
Yeah. For those who don't know what she's referencing, on Thursday and Friday, we did the 10 movies you must see in your lifetime. Mm-hmm. And we had a panelist of 3 guys, one who was an actor, one who was a film major in college, and another who's more just like a average everyday guy, but he's big into movies and TV shows, so he's been rating them for years and watches them all the time, and in his words, he's seen more movies in the last week than you probably have in the last 6 months. So so yeah, we had that fun panel of three guests on to talk about that, and we spanned that over 2 days, Thursday and Friday. So highly encourage everyone at home to check that out. On Thursday we did numbers 10 through 6, and on Friday we did numbers 5 through 1. And some of them said that it wasn't a strict, like, 10 is the worst out of these and 1 is the best of these. It's more so like these are 10 movies that you should see. But they're definitely, especially when it got to the top ones, people were like, oh yeah, these are like some of the top ones. So yeah, there were a lot of good movies on there in theory. I haven't seen, actually, I think maybe the majority of them.
Same.
So that was kind of cool to now have a nice little watch list that we can work through. So on Thursday, we watched one movie that night after seeing that, and then on
Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, and then on Friday, well, did we watch one on Friday or Saturday?
I don't remember.
I can't remember, but what was the other one that we watched?
Oh gosh.
Now we're both gonna blank on it. Well, once we remember, Kill Bill. We saw Kill Bill.
Oh yes, that was we watched during the day on Saturday.
Yes, yeah, that one was.
That was really good.
That one was very good.
I liked that one much more than Dumb and Dumber.
yes. As I told the guys on Friday, you know, I like Dumb and Dumber. I can appreciate it, but I don't know if I would put it up on that list. But that's the beauty of these lists: is not everyone's gonna have the same.
I decided to take a nap. Oops.
Yeah.
But
oops.
One of my movies that would have been on my top 10 list, which I might still be making and sharing, but was Titanic, and that got talked about on Friday for something. I think for the nudity scene.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just topless. They never showed.
Yeah, and that's how it was still PG-13. Someone says, "Oh, it's because they drew her or whatever." It's like, no, it's just because she was topless, probably.
Well, yeah, like I think, and then the easel was like covering the bottom half of her. Like, I don't think they ever showed that.
No, they didn't.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was on Friday, And our challenges on Thursday and Friday. Thursday was for you guys to tell us your list of what your top 10 would be, or at the very least commentate on what ours were. And then on Friday's challenge was to actually go and watch one of these movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then bonus points if you come back and tell us about it, or share something on social and tag us. But at the very least, go watch one of these things. I mean, these guys gave a lot of good reasons as to why these movies would be good to watch. And also, besides the 30 that were officially on the list, there were countless others that were mentioned throughout.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're ever looking for something to watch, there's now a wealth of places for you guys or a wealth of movies for you guys to find from those 2 episodes.
Yeah, and as we go through and watch them, we should add to the list where like it's available. So Kill Bill on HBO or whatever.
Nice.
Yeah.
For those who have iPhones, you can simply swipe down from the middle of your app screen to pull up what's called the Spotlight search. And if you type in your movie or TV show there, it'll show you what platforms it's available on. And also, regardless of what phone you're on or computer you're on, if you go to Google and type it in, you can see watch options as well.
Yeah, the one thing that is nice about just hearing it from someone like, oh, it's available included in this free package is because in the Spotlight search and on Google, it'll show you, oh, it's available on here, but then you go on there and it's like, oh, you need the stars upgrade. Like sometimes it'll say available on Hulu, but it's not actually available with Hulu. And sometimes it'll say like available on Amazon Prime, but it's only available to rent, not included with Amazon Prime Video. And they don't distinguish on that. So
well, there you go.
But that's why.
Spoken like a true pro. Maybe we should have you on the panel.
Streaming,
Yeah, I like it. Well, any last thoughts on that before we transition over to today?
Mm-mm.
All right, let's roll that intro. Helpful for life. And welcome back to What the Hell is Water? Today is May 16th. This is episode 99. Good morning, Danielle.
Good morning.
And today we're going to talk about me.
Want to talk about me, want to talk about I, want to talk about number one, oh my, me, my, what I think, what I like, what I know, what I want, what I see. I like talking about you usually, but occasionally I want to talk about me, oh me. Haven't heard that song in a while.
Pretty good rendition. I like it. As I was looking up the song to make the thumbnail for today, I saw a comment in YouTube. First off, YouTube only had it at like 480p or something. Like, I don't know if they filmed this video on VHS and uploaded it or what, but it is old enough to where it may have just been lower quality. But one of the comments was, this is the song that got me into country or something like that.
Oh, that's funny.
And for those of you who don't know what we're referencing, there's
Toby
a song
Keith.
called I Want to Talk About Me by Toby Keith. And yeah, he's someone who we listened to a lot growing up, and
really just I think it was just his one album, or like that one time period where my family was into him, was like Red Solo Cup, Want to Talk About Me. What's the one where he's like, I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. That song was a great song.
I think a lot of people would know a lot of songs from Toby Keith. He's been doing it for a while, since '93. So almost 30 years. But yeah, I think he's a lot of people, I bet, would like him that would not claim to like other country.
Well, you.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Prime example.
Like, yeah,
and I'm not really big into a lot of country.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so want to talk about me. So today the other me referenced in the thumbnail was Taylor Swift.
Mm-hmm.
And I care to give that one a rendition.
I know that I'm a handful, baby. I know that I went psycho on the phone. That's not wrong lyrics. Whoopsie-doo. That's all. Yeah, this morning. I think I blended to... it's so hard when you're coming from singing another song without hearing the opening bars of that song.
Whoopsie-doo, though. I don't think
There
I've
you
ever
go.
heard you say whoopsie-doo in my entire entire life.
It's like that one time I was getting up onto the bus at A&M and I tripped going up the steps
Nice.
and said, "Oh gosh," as I was falling instead of like something more like
explicit.
Yeah. And so then everyone on the bus was like, "Okay, Disney princess, come get on the bus." Oh gosh.
Dear me.
And then I proceeded to tell everyone else that I saw that day that was my new like expletive, and so then everyone started saying "oh gosh" in my sorority, and yeah, it was fun.
I like it. I like it. And for those who are like, what, Danielle's in a sorority? I thought she walked away from Rush Week. What's the story on that?
Oh yeah, it was a non-Greek service sorority. It was really just one of the 12,000 organizations that are at A&M now. It's probably not that many.
It's probably not that many, but it's over 1,000 for sure.
Yeah.
When we were there, it was like 800 or something like that, and now I'm sure it's over 1,000. But the Greek life story that we referenced was, do you remember what day that was? We talked about that one day last week.
I think it was with Brittany because
with Brittany. Yeah.
She rushed.
So make sure to check out our Tuesday episode from last week with Brittany Garcia. We talked a little bit about sororities in Rush Week, and she had to do Rush Week in Ithaca, New York, where it was negative degrees, I think she said, outside.
And so it was negative degrees at her Rush Week. It was like over 100 for my Rush Week, and like walking in between all the, like on the Monday. I think this is similar, if not the same, for like every Rush Week wherever you are. Monday is like you go to every single house that is available on campus and like talk to your assigned, like, oh gosh, maybe we shouldn't get in. This is a whole story in itself, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then we'll let that one slide.
Okay.
So now that we had a nice rambly intro, which we're good at,
always.
Today's show is talking about me time. We just had a little fun with our thumbnail and with our intro, because those are some fun songs that Danielle likes to relate to, and me as well.
Mm-hmm.
But me time. What would you say is the concept of me time, Danielle?
Well, I have come to like maybe conflate it with self-care time, but I like how we defined it. We were talking about last week. It's like scheduled but unplanned solo time, or like just time to do whatever you want to do. Another thing that I heard about just within the last year was the concept of a butterfly day, which is where you designate a day to just flit about doing whatever you feel called or you feel like you want to do that day. Like whatever you're inspired to do. So like maybe you like call up a friend and go to lunch, and then run this errand while like mixing it with a shopping trip for something fun you've been wanting to buy yourself, or like, I don't know. That was a long rambly intro about my thoughts about me time. There you go.
Let's be real. We've never made any indication that we're anything but rambly and tangential. So don't no worries about that at all. Yeah. So me time. I think the definition I kind of like most is time that you have to do what you want to do, and I think a lot of people don't prioritize that much, and especially this is true for somebody who has a lot of responsibilities, whether that's work-related, family-related, or you just fill your life up with a whole bunch of things to do, and don't give yourself the downtime. I would say that I don't think me time needs to be downtime. But I think it's probably healthy to have at least some me time that is downtime. And that was one kind of slight difference I would say between my definition and yours, is that although I certainly think me time can be, what'd you say you conflated it with? I'm blanking on the words.
Self-care.
Yeah, self-care. Although I do think that, that's a fine way to use it. I don't think it needs to be that, right?
Yeah.
And meaning, and when we say self-care, like some of the things that come to my mind are like, oh, okay, well maybe I'll meditate, or I'll journal, or I'll do mindfulness practice, or I'll
take a bath,
or I'll do my
or
manicure, or whatever. Things that are intentionally meant to like restore.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, those are all great things. But I think me time can also be just you doing what you like to do to relax, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's reading a book or watching a show or cooking or um, participating in a hobby, whether it's a sport or a game or a video game or horseback riding or
Yeah, and that's I think maybe why my mind skews toward intentional me time as like intentional restorative time, because I feel like I do a lot by myself for myself, like going to the Millhouse co-working space for like workshops or lunch and learns or whatever, and like my writing group, and I just joined an Artist Way morning pages journaling group there, and horseback, and so that, yeah, there's I feel like there's a lot of things that I go out and do like on my own, but meeting other people who are doing that same thing. But to have like the less scheduled restorative time at home is probably what I need to focus on bringing more into my
right.
life.
Yeah, and I would say that that's the thing is about that type of time may also just be harder for people to do and to prioritize because in a lot of ways people see it as in a lot of ways it kind of is doing nothing right where it's like oh and some people could deem it as like a waste of time right like I have so many other things to be doing like why would I spend the time doing that do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I feel like everything you said that you could be doing with your me time, like none of that was doing nothing.
True, but I I guess let me rephrase.
Mm-hmm.
Doing nothing productive. I would say like I feel like that is something where certainly I've had that thought before where it's like I have all these other things I need to be doing, all these things that need to get done, especially if you're a busy person, right? And it's like, well, how can I justify spending time reading or watching a show or taking a bath or just sitting around when I should be doing all of those other things, right?
Because you can't be productive all the time. No one can. Like, if you're just productive all the time, then eventually you break. So the restorative time is needed so you don't, like the whole, I think we've probably talked about this before on the show, the analogy of like you have to fill your own cup, like, because if you're just constantly pouring out from your cup, then I'm doing this parable horrible justice. Then and like eventually you're left with an empty jug. But if you spend your time just like staying centered and upright and filling your own cup until it floweth over, then that's how you spill out over like other whatever.
No,
That's the basic.
Even though you're not, you're stumbling on the words a little bit. Like that's a good concept, right? Like the whole concept of like, especially, I feel like parents probably can relate a lot to this type of thing, right? Because they feel this need, this responsibility to provide and to be and to help and to do all of these things for their children, right? And I'm sure people can think the same type of thing at work, like, oh, I have these responsibilities, I need to do these things, people are depending on me, all that type of stuff, and so they try and provide, but yet they're not taking care of themselves, not giving themselves the time for themselves, under the presumption that that is better overall, right? But as we're
more selfless,
yeah,
versus like people could see the intentional pursuit of like a lot of time spent on yourself as selfish potentially.
Yeah, no, and the thing is the point is that it's not selfish to take that time to spend for yourself and to do the things that you want to do, because as you're saying, like, hey, if you're doing those things, then you're going to be building yourself up, you're going to be feeling good, you're going to be essentially, another way I like to think about it is like everyone gives off like energy, right? Like, and if you want to get like woo woo with it, you can. Personally, I don't, but some people like to, and it's like, hey, are you giving off positive energy or negative energy or no energy at all, right? And so it's like if you are always keeping your cup full, making sure you're always uh, doing the things you want to do and being fulfilled and things like that, then naturally you will be a source of positive energy, and people will be able to absorb some of that and go off your vibes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then also become positive without it becoming an unnecessary drain on you. Whereas if you're not taking the time to do the things for yourself, then you're eventually going to run out of things to give, like you were saying, and then you'll be in a bad spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then not only will you be in a bad spot at that point, but perhaps the people who you're supposedly helping and that are depending on you, well, maybe you're starting to have negative impacts on them instead of the positive impacts that you're wanting to have because you're maybe overstressed and overworked, and maybe your energy becomes a lot more negative and toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like oh, there was something I was gonna jump off on with um selfish. It's not selfish. Oh, that I feel like uh it's like we can't make everyone else happy. But the one thing that we do have control over is our responsibility for making ourselves happy. And also, I feel like as long as you're not feeling like what you want to do is go murder people or like harm people, we have these God given passions or interests or like curiosities, things that we are called to explore or things that we think doing will make us happy. And since that's all we can do, ultimately, like we can't be responsible for other people's happiness, as long as it's not a harmful activity to other people, I don't see like how it could be selfish to pursue the things that fill you up, because yeah, ultimately they will. I feel like that's how you'll find your best way to serve and help others is by like figuring out how to make yourself happy and help yourself and um, like start yourself on your own growth path before you can help others. So
Yeah. Well, one thing that this makes me think of is, and this may be a controversial opinion for some people, but I like to think of sporting events with your kids, because a lot of times, um, a lot of times there is, as kids are growing up, you have them go all these activities. Maybe they're sports, maybe there's something else, right?
mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's so many people who feel like they need to be at all of the activities and watching all the activities, and like I'm never gonna miss a game, all those types of things. Uh, and then they'll travel all over. They'll do all these things for their kids and their activities. Uh, and I would be curious to know, and for us when we have our eventual kids, and of course, obviously you never know until you're in the situation what you're gonna do and what you're gonna want and what you're gonna prioritize, and everyone's different, all that kind of stuff. There's my disclaimers. um, is what would it be like to at least occasionally be like, hey, you know what, I'm not going to go do this thing, I'm not going to go watch this because I'm going to go do something for us or myself, and I'm going to go do my own thing. And I don't know, I wonder if that sends a good message or not to the kid, right? Because on one hand it's like, oh, he's not coming to see my thing, and if I make that good shot or goal or whatever, then he never saw it. But it's also saying like, hey, it's important for you to prioritize yourself and things like that. But obviously, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, and also I feel like um well, maybe like me going out to do this horseback thing, like I don't feel like I always need someone there watching, you know. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's all I.
that's all you got on that one. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. So, okay, so the why it is important for people to have me time. Basically, we think it's important for people to take time for themselves so that they can be their better selves. And one of the quotes I put in the description was, "Wherever you go, there you will be," or something along those lines. There you are,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that I don't think a lot of us have really like taken in and realized like, hey, like regardless of what situation you're in, who you're with, or whatever, like you are always going to be there. And that's just kind of how this works. And so if you want to be your best you and you want to provide the best experience for those around you, then by being your best self, you are going to make everything better. And another analogy, of course, that we got to mention at least once is the oxygen in the air in the airplane, right? It's like, hey, you put the oxygen mask on yourself before you help others, because if you don't put your oxygen on first, perhaps you pass out or whatever before you can get to helping others. So same kind of thing here with having the me time. So it's important to care for yourself and to help yourself be solid on your own, with the help of others perhaps, but making sure that you are prioritizing time for yourself for what you want to do, because it helps you do better for everyone else. And even if there is nobody else involved, it helps you be better, right? So what about that case? I mean, do you have any specific thoughts on someone who's maybe they're just single and living by themselves and they don't really feel obligation towards other or anything like that? I mean, do you think it's still worth prioritizing me time in that case?
Definitely. Even more so, because then you don't have the demands of other people getting infiltrated into your shoulds about how you should be spending your time, or like if there's like obligations to people you want to build a relationship with, where maybe you feel like, oh, I should be prioritizing this because of what they're going to think of me. So if it is just you and like you do really have, I guess, ultimate independence as to what opinions define how you spend your time, even more cause to spend that time figuring out what you want to spend it doing, and like how you can best spend your time alone.
Yeah, and it makes me think of some of the people in our lives who decided to not have kids, right? And this isn't necessarily a kid-centric topic, but kids are a very natural thing that can become a change of priorities and time and things like that, right? But when you look at some of the people who don't have kids in their lives, a lot of times like, hey, I'm going to do what I want, and I like my life, and I don't want to have to be responsible for these other things or have anything else pulling me or changing my priorities or things like that. So yeah, I mean, I think if you're single and you don't have all those responsibilities, that's a perfect time to figure those things out, because so that's the why. We didn't define it with stats or medical things, but I'm sure there are things like that to back up the importance of this stuff. But the difficult thing, and that this is what I've noticed as I talk with more and more people. A question I often ask people is, hey, what do you do for fun? I try to avoid just asking like, hey, what do you do for work? Because that's like, culturally speaking, in America, that seems to be like the go-to discussion especially with new people. It's like, well, what do you do for work?
Or just, what do you do?
Or what do you
do?
do?
And then the baseline assumption is, what is your career or vocation? Right.
So pro tip for you guys at home, if you want to have a nice, fun conversation starter, try asking that instead. What do you do for fun? Or what do you enjoy? Or what fills your cup, or something along those lines, to see what people say. And one of the, I don't know if sad's the right word, but one of the things that happens a lot of times when I ask that question is people say, I don't know, or I used to until something happened, or I had kids, or I got busy.
Or I haven't thought about that in a while. And it's like, you're not thinking about something fun you can put on your own schedule every week?
Right.
Every day?
And that's part of the value of that being a conversation starter is, if that's someone's answer, then one, you can continue the conversation and be like, oh, well, what did you used to do? Or what would you like to do? And perhaps you could be kind of the trigger for them to start thinking about it again, and for them to start prioritizing it again. Because frankly, a lot of people don't take the time to do that, or they don't think to do that. And it's an easy trap to fall into, especially today, because we're always bombarded from everywhere of all these things we can be doing or should be doing. We've got work, we've got friends, family, obligations, chores, all these types of things that we need to be doing. It's easy, if you're not intentional about it, you will kind of be just like a float that's being pushed wherever the tide takes you, right? And so on one hand, when you talk to someone, you're like, how could you not? But it's like, on their hand, they're like, how are you doing that, right? And the answer is to be intentional about it, right? And to force it to happen, and to schedule it to happen. Because if there's one thing that I've realized again and again and again, and over the last few years, is that if I don't schedule something intentionally to happen, it's not going to happen, at least not in the way that I probably want it to do. So scheduling me time is a very good activity to do. And so we'll see if we come up with another one, but that'll probably be the challenge for today is like, hey, put some me time on your calendar. And even if it's just, whatever it is for you, I would encourage you to do a little more than less. But I would say if you can put a 2-hour chunk of time sometime within the next week just for you, I think that would be a good thing to do. And of course, for some of you might be like, oh, I can't do that. But it's like, well, what if you really tried and you really thought about it and you really forced it to happen, especially if you're the person who is like, I can't do that, then maybe you're the one who needs that the most. And maybe a 2-hour chunk of you time for the first time in months should happen. And maybe that would be a good thing for you to say, like, hey, you know what? I don't ever do this. So I think 2 hours this one week might be good. And maybe that's something you start having as a recurring thing. It's like, you know what? Every Monday morning, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go get some coffee. I'm going to go on a walk. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to do whatever it may be, or, find the time that works naturally if possible. Because I think that's one of the traps that a lot of people fall into when it comes to trying to get something done, is they try and put it at some time where realistically it's just never going to happen. I was talking with a friend the other day about them doing their finances, and they're like, yeah, it's been like, I was like, hey, do you have that reminder to make sure you're doing your finances? Because they're important. And they're like, yeah, well, it goes off once a week, but it's Friday at 4 p.m. So I'm realizing that that's not going to happen. I'm like, I'm glad you realized that. I might have been able to tell you that.
I mean, besides the alliteration, Friday, 4 p.m. finances, I don't think that's a good time.
Right. It's like, that's something that unless you just really enjoy doing finances and that's celebrating for you, then you're probably not going to do that on Friday at 4 p.m. So as you're trying to choose
Money Monday.
Yeah. As you're trying to choose that time for your me time, figure out what times may naturally exist. If you've got kids, maybe there's a time where they're naturally going to be away. Or if you've got a job, like, all right, when is the time where you're going to be home and you can prioritize some of that time? And if you need to schedule some things or get some help to help you make that me time happen, maybe you need somebody to take your pets or your kids, or maybe you need somebody to cover you at work or whatever. Like, by scheduling it, you can then figure out, all right, if I'm going to make this happen, I need to do A, B, and C. And then you can make A, B, and C happen so that you can get your me time.
Yeah. Or so this brings up in the Artist Way workshop that I'm working through, there's this concept called the artist date. And it's basically intentional me time once a week where you do something solo that's just something you want to do and that is like restorative. And they give all sorts of different examples. And like in the group, we've already had some people like who went out and drew a drawing on the sidewalk in chalk because they're an artist who don't usually use chalk or whatever. And so that was how they spent their artist date, playing like they used to as a kid with chalk.
Say artist date.
Artist date.
So like, you're like having
taking
a date
yourself on a date
with yourself. Okay.
Yeah. And then some people have gone to a coffee shop by themselves and like ordered whatever, fancy latte they normally wouldn't, and then sit there and work on your writing that you want to be working on or whatever. And you don't always have to be creating something on your artist date. It's just basically, like you said, that intentionally scheduled time where your purpose for that time is to treat yourself to something you want to do for your own happiness, and filling your cup so that then your creativity, specifically to the artist date, is how she talks about it. Basically, it's about unblocking your creativity. And something that I did for my artist date was I went to Half Price Books and was like, I'm just going to spend like 45 minutes to an hour wandering around and looking through books in my favorite section to see if there's anyone who's like turned in an annotated copy or like something written in the margins, like trying to find my own Harry Potter Half-Blood Prince, like his potions book where he finds. And then, yeah, so just like looking through books, old books. And like that's therapeutic for me. Or like making a necklace, like this necklace. I put on one of my favorite Disney movies and made this necklace. Why is that there? And yeah, so just like things like that where, you know, you can be doing something productive or not, but ultimately it's the point is it's you defining how you want to spend a certain amount of time for you.
Yeah, I like that definition right there for sure. So, uh, you know, one of the things I wanted to point out is like a lot of the time so far we've been talking about time that you are intentionally blocking off to do nothing else other than this thing. And I think that's important, and I think that's something that people should do. It's up to you to determine the duration and the frequency, but I think at least weekly is very valuable. And I think the closer you can get to daily may be more useful. But that's kind of up to you guys to decide. Like, is it more useful to you to have, say, 4 30-minute kind of chunks, like, you know, throughout the week? Or is it more valuable for you to have a 2-hour chunk all at once? And maybe that's dependent on whatever your you thing is, right? Like if you're doing something that inherently is best to be done in one sitting, maybe for example, you're playing a video game that you need to get through a large chunk of time, or a movie. By definition, you want to have a longer chunk where you're sitting there. So maybe something like that, it would be more like to have a 2-hour chunk once a week or something like that. But maybe that's not as important, and it's better for you to have that 15 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, whatever it is you can do. That being said, there's plenty of ways you can spend some me time. Make the me time wherever you are, if that makes sense. So, for example, one of the ways I do this is when I'm cleaning or when I'm doing chores, I'm always listening to music, audiobook, or a podcast. And I say always, but a lot of the times I'm doing that. And other times I actually intentionally turn everything else off just to let myself think and process. Because that's another thing I feel like a lot of us don't do, is allow ourselves the time to process. There was actually the time you were you showed me your work journal from when you used to work at the other startup. And do you remember the thing that your CEO said make sure to do in the morning and afternoon?
Yeah, leave at least, I think it was at least an hour clear in both the mornings and the afternoons to collect your thoughts. I was like, oh, yeah. that's somewhat what I'm trying to do with the morning pages. Like it's sort of like a writing meditation where I'm trying to write out all my thoughts as the stream of consciousness. As they come into my brain, just dump them onto the page, and do that, within the 30 to 45 minute block in the morning before I then go and create the writing that I want to produce versus all of this random crap that just needed to come out of my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I got lost in my own train of thought there for a second, which is, suiting.
Collect them.
But yes, whenever you told me that, like, okay, so Danielle, for some context, was an executive assistant at a startup that had 40 employees or so, and she was also like an office manager, among other things. She wore
travel agent,
yeah.
Event planner,
yeah,
employee engagement officer, happy hour instigator.
But as she was working there, she had a little work notebook where she kept her notes on things. And
it was basically my work bullet journal.
Yeah, and that's when you started doing bullet journaling too, right? And so the other day she pulled it out and she was like, "Oh, well, here's like I think it was a front page of reminders or something like that." And she said like, "Oh yeah, look at this. This is a good one." And she said, "Make sure to leave 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon to collect your thoughts." I was like, that's genius. I think that's so important. And I've realized that more and more as time goes on. And why didn't you tell me earlier, Danielle? You knew this 4 years ago or 5 years ago, however long ago.
See, this is why you keep a journal.
So real quick on that one, journaling. Yeah. You want to add 2 cents on journaling, how that might affect me time?
Yes. Well, journaling in itself is intentional me time for me. And the reason why I think journaling can be beneficial to anyone and everyone is because it is time. I think regardless of the style of journaling you're doing, you will gain some sort of self-awareness. And I think the more aware you are of yourself and like the more you know, oh yeah, like I need this amount of me time, otherwise I start being this type of shitty to people, or I need to do this particular kind of me time this often, because like this is how I thrive and grow. Like I feel like you're learning more about what goes on inside yourself, and that I feel like can always be helpful.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you know, some people kind of avoid it or like run away from it. But I think it's important to recognize, like, again, if you're not addressing it, that doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean that's not happening. So, would you not rather like know the things that are going on and know, for example, maybe there's certain things that trigger you to do a certain thing or think a certain way or feel a certain way, and oh, by the way, like you probably are having some outside impact on other people. Let me rephrase that. You are having an outside impact on other people, whether or not you realize it. And kind of like we were talking about earlier, like, hey, is that going to be a positive or a negative or a neutral? So hopefully we all aim for positive or at least neutral. So we're not kind of being a toxic source for other people.
Or even just take other people out of it. Like if you want to look at it from the purely like selfish perspective, like do you not want to just be radiating positivity from within and like living within that happiness basically, because you are filling yourself up? So
yeah,
I don't know,
and
like screw everyone else. Like you can't control what they're gonna do or how they're gonna take you, or how they're going to try and affect how you feel about yourself or your day or what you're doing. But if you are self-aware and you know like why you're living your life the way that you are, then I feel like no one can like penetrate.
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. So another huge lesson for us, I mean, one that I think we inherently knew, but now that we've kind of lived it a lot more, we really internalize it a lot more, which is how much better of a you can present when you're feeling good, when you're confident, right? And you guys have even seen that here on this show. There's been times where we fumble. There's been times where we cry. There's been times where we walk off set.
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, we can address that now because so last week on Wednesday, we were having a conversation. We were talking about like what all we've been doing with the business. And then Reed asked me like, Danielle, what are you doing with DanielleMGarcia.com? And I started just getting very in my own head about like, oh, what am I, what have I been doing? Like I've been failing on all these promises I've made my followers for my journal challenge, and I'm behind on my book because I'm like doing all this other stuff, and and then realizing like once I started feeling like, oh, I'm an imposter because how can I like tell other people I want to help them do all these things in their life when I'm not doing that for myself? And then I had therapy that day, and I was talking about how like, oh, I was having like a big mental breakdown of imposter syndrome this morning. And she's like, Danielle, how can you have imposter syndrome when you're creating what you want to be doing? Like you're making up your own job description. So how can you be an imposter because you're not trying to imposter anyone else or whatever? And I was like, oh, that's such a great way to think about it. And then later that day, I saw someone else talk about imposter syndrome, and they said that we get trapped in worrying about imposter syndrome when we're too focused on ourselves and how other people will see us or think about us versus just doing what we like feel like we want to be doing. So like when we're, I guess, stuck in the analysis side of it and thinking too much about what other people think of us, that's when it comes to like the selfish side of imposter syndrome. Someone else explained it way better, but basically it was all
was good.
tying in like the you time or me time with.
No, I think that was good. And for those who haven't heard of it before, imposter syndrome is a term for when you think like you don't belong in the place you're belonging. And this is an extremely popular thing to feel in the world of entrepreneurship and also in the world of content creation, which is a
or just creators or artists,
creators,
in
artists,
general.
whatever. Like it's and you can listen to interviews with famous musicians and artists and all this type of stuff, all these types of people, and a lot of times they are like insecure and they like think that they're like their stuff's not good enough and they don't belong here, and there's another phrase that kind of goes hand in hand with this, which is fake it till you make it. And a lot of people don't realize that most of the time there's not like a moment in life where you're like, oh, I made it. You're kind of always feeling like, hey, oh, well, I got this level of success, but really I want to be here and I want to do that. And that bar, at least for a lot of people, is kind of always going higher and higher. And, for example, a famous actor or comedian or whatever, like they get on the Tonight Show or something like that. Like that's a big achievement. That's a big milestone. But yet a lot of people get there and then they still feel like, well, I didn't do as well as that other person.
I gotta get on.
Now I gotta, yeah.
The other show with the other Jimmy.
My own special. Yeah. It's not over till I get all the Jimmys. Yes. So yes, imposter syndrome is that feeling, or maybe like you're in a meeting, especially if you're like at a new job, or maybe you're in a new position. You're like, oh, these people, why should they listen to me? Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. And the bottom line is it's or
you don't ask questions because you're worried about, that'll show people that I don't know. Yeah.
And or maybe you come in overly confident because you're like, you want to show like, hey, I know what I'm talking about, right? There's a lot of different ways it kind of manifests itself. But it really all boils down to fear, kind of like a lot of things. But it boils down to fear of failure or fear of
judgment or rejection.
Or rejection, yeah, all these types of things. And another thing that pops in mind is like all the things that I should be doing, right? And if there's one thing that living with me is the power of having too many shoulds.
Stop shooting all over yourself.
Don't should yourself. Yes. So we talked a good bit about the why. I want to talk real briefly about the what. What is it in our lives that we do, and then I want to help. After that, I want to give some suggestions as to how people can do this themselves. Right. So let's switch over to the what, at least for us. So Danielle, when it comes to you, what do you do for your me time?
So like the main thing I do is journaling, but even that, I feel like I still have all these shoulds around that. And more specifically, I've been wanting to commit to this process of morning pages journaling, which is every morning writing 3 pages of brain dumped thoughts. And I've been in this workshop now, like tomorrow will be week 5, chapter 5 of the 12-week workbook. And I've maybe done my morning pages journaling 1 day a week for those 4 weeks. So I guess for me personally, what's top of mind is I really want to commit to first thing in the morning before I start on my other time blocks and creativity, productivity time, to do those 3 pages first thing. And another thing I like to do for me time is work from the pool in the summers. And I went to the pool for the first time this season last week, and we'll probably, that's why, my hair is a little bit of a mess today, but it doesn't matter because since the storm got out of the way last night, the pool will probably be really like brisk and cool today. And something else that I like to do for myself are little rituals to go with the moon cycle, and also my like personal intentional goal setting cycle and habit tracking, and just how I like to make myself a little better, or think that I'm putting that intentional me time into my self-development and growth. And so with taking a look at the goals that I've set and where I'm at, and kind of like refocusing my habits for the next couple of weeks, with the full moon today, and it's a lunar eclipse. I like to journal about all the things that like are on my mind, like what really I need to focus on moving forward, and then jump into the pool and submerge all the way, and then like come up, and it's like all the shit that you don't need to worry about anymore. It's just washed off of you.
Yeah. No, I like that idea. And I don't know, one of the areas of growth for me that you've helped with is leaning into and allowing some of the things that I would roll my eyes at or call cheesy or wave away as woo woo or whatever. Just removing that like barrier or filter sometimes and being like, you know what? So what? Like, when I remember, I think it was a Samhain festival. They're not festival, but ritual. Samhain celebration we went to back in October.
It was November 1st, possibly.
November 1st. So yeah, we'll add a link to that episode where we talked about that. Won't get into what the details of that are, but the short part of it was, as part of this ritual that we did, we wrote down something on a piece of paper and we lit it on fire. And it's like, okay, regardless of whether or not you think that has some literal magical or mystical effect, there is something to be said about the symbolism of doing an action to make something happen, right? So I really like the idea of just like, hey, you know what? If you want to go and like, I think I might have missed a little part of what you said, but so describe the pool thing one more time.
Basically, it's just a journaling ritual, brain dump. So like I wanted to do my morning pages at the pool today, and then after letting all of the thoughts out onto paper, and just jump in the water and submerge yourself and come up and like start with freshened vigor on your intentional me time that you want to do.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, get all this crap out of my head, empty the thing, clear the pipes, get ready for whatever it is to start flowing, and then have the symbolic thing of, all right, jump in, wash yourself clean or whatever, and then explode out into the world, ready to go. Another thing that made me think of was yes, okay, I thought of it now. It took me a second. When it comes to waking up in the morning, there's one trick that I heard, and admittedly you should probably use more, and it sounds super silly, but it's supposed to be very effective. I don't know, but let me finish this one. Is when you're going to get out of bed, pretend like you're a rocket launch and count down from 10 or 5 or whatever. And then at the end of that count, you get down, you're 3, 2, 1. And then you like, get up and you're like, all right, I'm ready to go. And you get that momentum and launch. Was that the same thing?
That's Mel Robbins. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The 5-second rule, I think is what she calls it.
Okay. So Mel Robbins 5-second rule. So if you guys want to hear a little bit more about that, you can look that up.
I'm pretty sure that's her name. Now I'm questioning. It's like when you say something enough times, it's like it sounds weird. But yeah, there you go.
Okay, cool. So for you, the what for your me time, I believe I heard were like journaling and pool time. Did you mention horseback?
I didn't, but I do that. I do my writing group and this Artist Way creativity workshop. So those are all things that I do. But I think for me, what I want to focus on incorporating is that, because like I journal throughout the day. Like I keep a notebook with me, and I'm always like taking 2 minutes here and there in between tasks to do the interstitial journaling, as we've talked about before. But I really want to I guess what I want to change or focus on adding into my routine is that long form stream of consciousness, brain dump, morning pages journaling.
Gotcha. And then, but some other things that you do for your time, at least from what I've observed, right? You watching watching TV shows, some trash TV. And
Yeah, reality. Love Island. Gotta love Love Island while I'm cooking.
yeah, and saying
That's
cooking and reading,
Mhm.
and occasionally some Red Dead Redemption.
I've only played that once since the last summer.
Yeah, yeah,
So
not so very occasionally.
yeah, I
But I
I should
also
get back on that
yeah,
and stream it. I'm very entertaining, I've been told.
and then one of the other things that it also includes other people, but I think is part of what fuels you is talking with friends and things like that, right? By the way, how do you spell Samhain? I can't remember. It's some weird spelling.
It's spelled like Sam Hain.
That's right.
Samhain.
Gotcha. So yeah, so those are some of your things. When it comes to me and what my things are, um, one thing that I'm trying to explore a little more and work on for me is having some more me time that doesn't involve other people, because I've realized that I think I've overly relied on having other people around. I've never really lived alone except for part of one summer when I went on my internship in Tucson. But even then, it was not very long, and there was another person who lived nearby. We basically lived together, even though we slept in different places. So I'm someone who is very much extrovert, get a lot of energy from other people, and so recently I've been trying to explore a little bit more of just being with myself and being comfortable with that and things to do along those lines. But things that I find recharging and things that I prioritize for me do sometimes involve other people, or a lot of times involve other people. So I don't want to discourage people or make you think that me time has to be solo.
Yeah, it can be intentionally choosing to spend time with the people that bring out the best you.
Right. Yeah.
And that you feel uplifted and like you leave the interaction feeling like better about yourself.
Yeah. And there are definitely days where I have to get that, and being by myself actually would be the worst thing for me. And I think that's probably true for a lot of us out there, especially if we're having a more sad or depressed day. A lot of times the best thing you can do is, one, change your environment, get out of wherever you are, and two, probably get around some other people. I had someone tell me recently how I helped them realize that one day, and it made a really big difference for not only their day, but maybe their weekend, and maybe kind of their view on a whole event. Being intentionally vague here, but yeah. So for me, a lot of this time is spending time with other people, because that's kind of how I get charged up, how I get energy. And so I can't not mention Rocket League video game. I love doing that, and I'm sure that'll change over time and become a different game. But I like playing video games with other people. I like playing board games. I like playing disc golf, and I like playing a lot of other sports too. Don't play them as often, but tennis, volleyball.
You play soccer every week.
Play soccer every week. Reading, I like to read. I have been thinking recently that I want to intentionally make some more time where specific for reading. Right now, I pretty much read fiction right before bed, and when I'm busier, I don't allow myself or don't make the time to.
And we need to get in bed when we're supposed to get in bed at the same time.
Yeah.
Not watching one more Netflix show on the couch.
Right. Which, if you haven't yet, turn off your autoplay. We have an episode and clip that we'll share.
Now it just makes the process that much more drawn out. It's like, press play. One more.
But yeah, turning off your autoplay can help a lot with that. But yeah, having that bedtime routine. So real quick, pro tip for those of you who are looking to improve your bedtime routine. If your phone allows it, and I know for sure the iPhone does, I'm not sure of Android off the top of my head, but set a bedtime. And for me, I have an audible sound play an hour before I want to be. It's called winding down. And that also turns my phone to where my notifications won't come through. And it plays audibly, so if people are around, even if it's just me and Danielle. But
it's like lullaby and good night
It's very distinctly like this is bedtime. And so yeah, like if we're in a group of people, it
It's like, does
gives
someone need to put the baby to bed? What is that?
right. It gives you the time and the trigger to say like, hey, it's time for us to start winding down. And like, of course, I can be like, you know what? I'm gonna ignore that. I'm gonna stay out a little later tonight. But other times it's like, yeah, we should probably start wrapping this up. So that's one thing. Setting the kind of the nighttime, the bedtime ritual. I forget what the thing is called. Do you remember what it's called? Sleep mode or whatever.
Mm-mm.
So that's one thing. Another thing is
Maybe bedtime.
not taking your phone to bed with you. That's a huge thing. Just put it somewhere else, which also can help you with waking up.
If you have to stand up to turn off your alarm, that infinitely increases your chances of actually getting up with your alarm.
Exactly. And by intentionally putting your phone away and turning off the notifications, that can allow you to then like signal to your body like, hey, this is now bedtime, and you can go about your routine.
And then only your Kindle is your only technology available by the bed or whatever.
Right. Or your book or whatever it is that helps you kind of wind down. But I found that initially when I first started reading, I was doing nonfiction books, and I realized later that got my brain going too much. So I switched to doing fiction books because it allowed me to kind of disappear into the world. And, sure, there are some times where the book's like so good and I had to keep reading. It may keep me up a little later, but most of the times it's like I'm reading, and all of a sudden, like, I don't remember what happened on the page. I'm like, okay, time to go to bed. So it helps me wind down and helps me also kind of clear out my head. Morning pages is one thing. I bet evening pages is another type of thing where it allows you to kind of process and dump things off. Whereas reading, at the very least, helps you focus on something else that is not like the worries and stresses of everyday life or whatnot. It allows you to redirect your brain to something else, which allows you to relax and then kind of fall asleep. So reading is something else I want to do a little bit more. But yeah, talking with new people and meeting people is a huge one for me as well. So those are our what's, kind of rambly said per usual. But the other thing I wanted to mention was the things that make my life rich. We talked about that a while back. So we'll link to that episode where we first mentioned it, or if we can find that. I don't know exactly where that is, but I am going to this week actually give the full list. So I announced it then. I said why it was important, and I talked about, hey, here are the things that I said were important to me and that helped make my life rich. And some of those were around having kind of me time, and some of those were not. So that's something I want to expand on, and I think we'll end up doing live sessions of those, so we can interact with you guys and hear what y'all's lists are, hear what these things make you think of, or if you guys have suggestions for me, all of that type of stuff. I think we'll do that maybe as an evening show or something. But we'll figure that one out. So let's wrap up with the how here, Danielle. So when it comes to the how, what would you say is the how people can get started on prioritizing their me time?
I think look at your calendar and schedule something for this week. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need to be some complicated thing. Oops. It doesn't need to be some big old complicated process. It really is as simple as put some time on your calendar and schedule it and make it happen.
And it's an appointment with yourself. And, maybe for those who don't live alone and like maybe it is something where you need to schedule a time to go to a restaurant or a coffee shop or a store by yourself, because if you scheduled a time at home, then inevitably your time would end up getting pulled in other directions from others at your home or whatever. So maybe that is something you want to do, is schedule a time to go somewhere by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to make sure to emphasize that somewhere does not have to be somewhere far away or some big grand thing. Like, again, be kind of realistic with yourself, especially if this is new to you and you're just now trying to prioritize this into your life. Don't try and be like, you know what, I'm going to every day, I'm going to go to this place that's an hour away that's perfect for me, and I'm going to spend 3 hours there and
No,
do
you
all
can
these
just
things.
take your lunch break one day and say, I'm going to go through the drive-through of whatever fast food I normally don't let myself have because I think I shouldn't like it. And I'm going to go through that drive-through, and then I'm going to eat it in my car while I watch Hulu on my phone little dashboard thing. Because I've totally done that before for a lunch break when like I needed some me time in the middle of my workday. And so I just took my lunch break in my car. There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. So there's one where it's like just a small change to your average daily rhythm. Another one is, hey, if you're going to go, say you have kids or some sort of obligation where you can't leave your office or leave your house because you just can't figure that thing out. Well, one, I would encourage you to, hey, if you had to figure this out, if something really bad happened and you had to, go handle some emergency, guess what? You would figure out some way to make it happen. So kind of apply that same logic to if this is an emergency, if I was going to do this, what would I do and how, and then start, hey, maybe there's someone I could call, like, hey, I really need to do this thing. It's important to me. I was wondering if you could help me out with this, and go from there. And of course, you can work on more sustainable solutions after that, if that's requiring someone to be really out of their way. But maybe it's also a flip offer thing, like, hey, why don't you help me out with this on Mondays, and then on Wednesdays, I'll help you out with this. There's a lot of different ways you can handle it, but the bottom line is don't let that be an excuse. Figure out a way to do it. But if you do need to stay inside of your house or whatever, and for whatever reason you can't do that, can't get away, put on some earmuffs or some headphones or something to give yourself that isolation. Close the door. Tell people that mommy or daddy or whatever is, this is my time now or whatever. Do not disturb. Like, you guys can figure it out. They'll live. They'll live. So make sure to find that space and that time. And maybe you needed to go just outside. If you just go out to your porch or just go walk around the corner, find a bench to sit on or the grass. Just get away from this stuff. I found that as another thing for me when I'm feeling overwhelmed. A lot of times, especially working at home and living at home, as I'm going around the house are all these small reminders that kind of trigger me and kind of stress me out and make me think of all the things I need to do. So for me, one of the more valuable things has been, when that type of thing's happening, is just change the environment, right? Get away. Don't hear the sounds of the kids in the background, or that dog that's barking all the time, or your significant other nagging you, whatever it may be. Like, just get away, even if it's just 15 feet out the door. So encourage you guys to do that. And so our challenge for today is to either take some me time today or put it on your calendar. And if it goes on your calendar and it slips, it doesn't happen the first time, that's okay. But make sure you reschedule it, because if you don't reschedule it, then it's not going to happen. So if you find out it didn't work, then okay, move it once. And one tip I gave someone the other day is, as you move it, if you need to, change the title to add a little symbol like a exclamation point or an @ sign to show that you've moved it one time. Because then if you find that you move it and then you move it again and you move it again, well, maybe you should have a little rule with yourself, like, all right, if I move this thing twice, I just got to suck it up and do it, because or I need to try a new time to schedule it because this one obviously isn't working.
Yeah. So like you try it in the evening and then try it in the morning, or yeah.
And tell somebody about it. Like, I would encourage you, especially if you...
Oh yeah, find people to do. Maybe what you want to do for your me time is similar to what someone else wants to do for their me time, and at the very least, you can like text and check in. Like, I have a friend where we want to meditate every day, and then be like, "Did you meditate? No. Here's what I did today. Like, I'll do it at bedtime or whatever." Yeah.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out, like, yeah, just because it's called me time doesn't mean that you can't do it with other people. Or, for example, maybe you are just, hey, at 5 p.m., we're going to have our me time. And you just kind of check in, like, to hold each other accountable. Like, hey, it's supposed to be me time. Like, put that thing down. Stop doing that other thing. Like, and I'm going to sit here, and you could even, if you want to be on a silent video with each other, like where you're video chatting, so you can just see that y'all are kind of like next to each other. But it's like, all right, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to knit, or you're there, reading your book or whatever it may be. So yeah. So take some me time for yourself or schedule it for the future.
This week.
That is your challenge. Yes, this week. I like that. And have that deadline of this week. But other than that, just do you have any last thoughts before I recap and send us on?
No, I'm going to go make some tea for my morning pages me time.
Nice. So for today, we talked a little bit about me, talked about number one, oh my, me my. And we
gosh.
What is that?
Oh gosh.
So we talked about what me time is, intentionally setting time for yourself to do the things that you want to do. And hopefully there are things that bring you joy or things that recharge you. We talked a little bit about some strategies as to how you can prioritize that time, even if you have other things going on in your life. And largely that means scheduling it and putting it on the calendar, making sure it happens, setting an alert with those calendars. And if you need to move it, you can. But if you're going to move it, make sure you don't keep moving it forever, then it never happens. Because trust me, I've done that type of thing before. Snooze the reminder. I have a reminder now I've snoozed for a week that I still need to process. So I'm going to go do that after this video. So we talked a little bit about ways to start doing it. Danielle and I shared some of our specific ways that we like to do it. And I mentioned the things that make my life rich that we will be doing sometime later this week. And that's I think that's pretty much it. Any other last thoughts?
Mm-mm.
Well, without further ado, we will let you guys get to your me time. So with that, have a wonderful rest of your day.